Welcome to the Healthcare Consultants Podcast, brought to you by the Chicago Health, Law, and Professional Licensing firm of Michael V. Fabia and Associates. This is your host, Nick Augustine, and today our guest is Chicago Bankruptcy Attorney Daniel Wint. Mr. Dan Wint has been a Chicago bankruptcy attorney for a considerable amount of time, and today, in this episode of the Fabia Law Firm's Healthcare Consultant Podcast, Dan addresses some frequent concerns and questions that people have about bankruptcy laws and how they can help. And today, our focus is on the healthcare industry, and we're going to talk about medical malpractice, injury claims, damage awards, of course, those automatic stays. People say, what is that? And more. So let's learn all about bankruptcy and how that can tie into those in the healthcare industry and people with all sorts of different issues. Let's say hello to Daniel Wint.
Hello, how are you?
Dan, I'm good. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into bankruptcy law and why you love it.
Well, I have been practicing for over 30 years, and in law school I took a bankruptcy class, and I thought it just made sense. It's a matter of helping people out with their finances and helping people solve problems. So that's why I like it, is helping individuals and small business owners figure out how to save things and how to handle different money problems that come up. So it's been very rewarding in that way, and that's why I've been with it for 30 years.
Do you find that, as I find, the anticipation of things is often worse than the thing itself? We see this as children with going to the dentist or getting a shot or anything. And with bankruptcy, I've heard people say over and over again, I was so worried about bankruptcy, I thought my life was going to be flipped, turned upside down, but it was actually really easy and really painless.
Right, and I think that there's a perfect example of that. When people file a bankruptcy case, they go in front of a person called a trustee. It's not a judge, it's an attorney or somebody who has different financial capabilities to review their case. And so what happens is people they used to, before COVID, have to sit in a room and wait for their case to be heard in a little room. It looks like a doctor's office with a waiting room. And I always tell people, and even now too, that the waiting's the hardest part, because then they go in, and if their case is prepared properly, like I do, then their hearing lasts less than 5 minutes. It's probably like a 3 to 4 minute hearing where they have to review if everything is accurate. And so then people get up from their chair and they're like, that was it? So absolutely, the waiting is the hardest part. Wasn't there a nice commercial like that? Waiting is the hardest part. So I think that that's right on. And with preparing for bankruptcy, people will be answering a lot of my questions and giving me documents so that by the time the bankruptcy actually happens, it'll be really easy and smooth. Absolutely.
Well, and other people are concerned with everybody's going to know about it. I'm going to be kicked out of my church, fired from my job, kicked out of my house. No one will talk to me. People approach it with the scorn factor. If you look up the definition of bankruptcy in the dictionary, it's all these negative words. And I think that that's exploited by a lot of the debt helper companies that take your money to pay them to essentially settle out some of your things and make deals on so they just attack bankruptcy. It's like so bad it's going to ruin you, but it's really not. I don't know why people are so freaked out. Like they're never going to be able to get another apartment, never going to get a job. Everyone, no one will even talk to you anymore. That's the fear that they put out there, and that's just so wrong.
What you're saying is 100% correct. And if you look at the media, the people that put together, like your Forbes magazine, Newsweek, all the daily publications, a lot of these articles about the consequences of bankruptcy are put out by those very companies, the big banks, the credit card issuers. So they really want to make it seem like it's the end of the world, when in reality, yes, bankruptcy is public record, but it doesn't show up, in the newspaper. It isn't publicized. It isn't like, somebody puts a banner outside your house. In reality, the only people that find out about your bankruptcy are the companies that you owe. And it's really not the end of the world, it's the beginning, because then once your debts are eliminated, people start getting credit. I've had people get car loans right after filing, believe it or not.
Yeah.
People get mailed credit card offers in the mail. Why? Because these companies want to give you credit because you can't file bankruptcy again for 8 years. So
yeah, you're a good risk.
Really, yeah, exactly. It's really just capitalism and how it works, and people are allowed a fresh start. And all the companies know that. They just don't want it to be publicized as something that's very easy or friendly to people. So that's 100% true. Is that it's really not the worst thing. Sorry.
No, and right now during COVID, anyone who tells me that their business was not affected by COVID, I say they're lying. I think everyone was affected, and I think bad things happen to good people, and things happen that are outside of our control. It's not as if there are all these people who went and spent all their money at the, gambling at the racetrack or whatever, spent it foolishly and are not paying the bills. People's personal businesses have suffered. If someone has been lucky enough to maintain all their everything, that's been good. But there have been, a lot of people, especially those who are self-employed, which a lot of people are self-employed, more and more. And technology has opened the door that there's so many job opportunities for people. And it's, again, and they have been, COVID has wrecked a lot of people's lives. And I don't think, if you're going to, I always say if now's the time to do it, now's the time to do it, because, no one's going to fault you for that. But let's talk about some of the more common roots of bankruptcy cases and what to expect, and just the common situations where bad things happen to good people. What are some of the sources and reasons that people are calling you?
Right. So one situation is a working class family, two parents both working with a couple kids, a mortgage to pay, and one or two car notes, and they're going along, and somebody gets sick and can't work. Okay, so somebody's laid off for several months, and they get a reduction in pay, and then all of a sudden they need to use their credit cards to make ends meet and to keep everything going. And if it's a choice between, paying for food or using your credit card to pay for it, then they'll have to do that. So people end up using credit cards in a pinch to make ends meet, and then all of a sudden it starts snowballing. Or they might fall behind in their mortgage payments, and they're already trying to pay everything, and they're behind. I can help them save their house with a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which reorganizes their finances so they can keep their house, get up to date on it, make good on their promises, and keep their house and car and keep everything going. So Chapter 13, I like to say, is a reorganization. It's like what Kmart does or whatever to reorganize their finances to keep going. There are plenty of companies that take advantage of the bankruptcy code to reorganize. This is what people and families can do.
Think of it like a financial planning tool.
100%. And I think that when people, and eventually, right now what I've seen in Illinois is that the courts have been running a little slow, but eventually these credit card companies and loan companies are going to want their payments, and they'll go to court and try to force people to pay more than they can afford on these debts, and then they'll have to reorganize and say, wait a minute, I pay you, but you have to wait your turn, or I can only pay a certain percentage. All those things can help you and can alleviate the pressure, for sure.
What about the guilt that people feel not being able to make their obligations?
Well, I think that's way overblown. I think that people feel like bankruptcy is a failure. In reality, the companies that, for example, Visa and MasterCard, build in a certain number of losses because they extend out credit. And guess what? If you miss one payment on a credit card or are late, then your interest rates on all the other cards go up. So instead of having affordable monthly payments, they balloon up. And that's all built into the equation for these card companies. They know a certain percentage will default or they won't get all the money. So you should not feel guilty because the system is stacked against consumers. Once they fall behind, it's a trap. Then instead of paying, say you charged $500 to buy groceries or Costco or whatever, then instead of paying $500, your interest rate spikes up and you're paying $750 or $1,000 for that shopping trip. So it really all spirals on top of each other, and then you're left with no choice. And you do have a weapon at your disposal, and you can reorganize your debts or you can eliminate certain debts. And it really, that's what the bankruptcy code is there for. It's legal, and it's certainly an opportunity for people to get their finances in order. And many companies have used it. Former president has used it with his companies many times, and it's perfectly legal. And so the moral aspect of it really is much overblown.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about medical malpractice cases. I know that that's one of the things that in the healthcare industry can be a troublesome thing. And, because this is a healthcare consultants podcast brought to us through the Favia Law Firm of Michael V. Favia, I always recommend and remind doctors, nurses, physicians, anyone who's subject to medical malpractice, consult with your regulatory experts and lawyers before you sign on settling these things on your own, because medical malpractice, how those things shake down can cause all sorts of license and regulatory problems later, especially if you are licensed in multiple states. That said, for purposes of this program with Dan Wint and talking about bankruptcy, what happens with medical malpractice cases when people come to you and ask you what happens with those and filing for bankruptcy?
Right. So when I talk to people, when I interview people for their initial consultation, I have to ask, do they have any pending lawsuits? Now, what does that mean? Have they been injured in a car accident or a job accident or something like that? Or have they been in a hospital or in a doctor's office where they think there was some medical malpractice that went on? Usually, if people come to me, they would have hired an attorney ahead of time if they thought that something was wrong. That lawsuit continues through the bankruptcy. But what happens is each state has a certain amount you can keep of an injury case. So, for example, in Illinois, if somebody has a medical malpractice claim and it's worth, say, $50,000, then they are allowed to protect the first $15,000 of it. So if it's an injury caused by a doctor through medical malpractice, yes, they can file bankruptcy and they can keep the first $15,000 of the proceeds. The rest of the proceeds, if people owe money to creditors, such as credit cards or other medical bills or things like that, they would get the rest. And also, when your attorney does a medical malpractice case, the first companies in line, other than the attorney who helps you, is the medical providers there. So if medical providers have a lien on the case and they're there to get some money out of it, then they would get paid. But after that, the bankruptcy court trustee can take anything beyond $15,000. So what does that mean? It means that depending on how long the malpractice case would take, it may be beneficial to file the bankruptcy and then get the amount of money that you get and then pay the bills that you would have paid anyway had you gotten it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Now, does that
and
with the $15,000 limit? I was going to say, are you talking with the $15,000? Is that an exemption, or is that with a 7 or a 13?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So $15,000 is what is an exemption, and that's in legal terminology. That's an exemption which is protected from creditors. In English, that's what you can protect and keep. Right.
Okay. And with medical malpractice, and winning a medical malpractice claim, on the other side, there's medical bills that we owe. So medical and hospital bills, especially for someone who've had, all you have to do is have an insurance lapse, and surprise, this is not covered, or you're out of. All sorts of things can lead us to problems with, and hospital billing. I'll say this about some of the doctor shows that Show the Resident, I think, really, really shined a light on the medical industry and how not all hospital groups and not all are made the same, and there are some that have hospital billing is definitely something to pay attention to, and the bills can get real. The people who cash pay for things and pay for cash find those doctors, and it seems to me like there's a whole kind of new separate industry of the doctor who makes house calls and takes cash, especially through things with COVID. I've seen more and more doctors go out on their own and kind of return to a practice that we've not seen in a lot of years because everyone was in big hospital and medical groups. And a lot of the doctors have gone their own way, and they're charging more reasonable prices because the billing can be astronomical, especially once you are admitted. So people will see these hospital bills, and from a long time it seemed that hospital bills would be forgiven, written off, but we're seeing more and more hospital bills that are, hospitals are going after and collecting from people. So that can lead people to Chapter 7 or 13. So tell us about those conversations with people with the medical bills. They just feel that they can't do anything about it, I suppose.
Right. I just want to ask the audience and ask you, have you ever looked at one of those estimate of benefits from your insurance company? It is insane to try to figure out. So it would show you, what goes, if you're lucky, it would show what goes towards your deductible and what your responsibility is. But most of the time, it's indecipherable trying to figure out what you're going to end up owing. And then all of a sudden, months later, you get a bill from a doctor. Oh, well, wait, that $800, no, that wasn't covered. That was part of your deductible for this year, or the family maximum, and all these things. It's so complicated. So I have people many times that have insurance that their copay portion is so much that it leads them to bankruptcy. If you have surgery on your hip or something like that, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that, if you have a $3,000 per person maximum and $5,000 family per, maximum, that can drive people into bankruptcy too. So it really just depends on your policy. If you get a high deductible policy, you can be bankrupt nonetheless. So it really depends on your policy and all that. So I've had plenty of people with plenty of medical bills that have just put them over the top. Now, some medical creditors will work with people. Well, during COVID and before, medical creditors don't typically say, we want $1,000 now. They might say, they might take payments on that. But what happens is, what if you have 3 or 4 of them that want payments? What if, you forget about a bill, or you're rehabbing and stuff, and then all of a sudden you get this huge bill that you can't handle. And then after a while, they send it to collection agencies. So it can really snowball and become a lot bigger problem. Like you think, $40 here, $50 here for copay is no big deal. But the problem is you get many other bills, and you have a doctor look at you and bill you, and then you have the physician's assistant takes a poke at you, and there's a bill, and then of course you have the $5 Tylenol. So all those things add up. And
I just think about with COVID.
Copay,
I was just going to say with COVID that I know people who've been admitted and they're on respirators and for like a week or more or months. I can't even imagine.
Right, and 100%. If you're hospitalized for something like COVID, then the bills just add up, and the minute you're admitted into the hospital, it's thousands more dollars. I only had one good experience. Once I went to the ER for some random pain that I had, and I went in, and they actually, when I was sitting there, gave me an estimate of how much my bill would be while I was sitting there. That's the first time that it ever happened. But most of the time, it's clearly a mystery as to how much they charge and how much your responsibility will be, and there's nothing you can plan in your budget for that.
Yeah, it's almost like you're going to the doctor or the hospital. Would you like an actual physician or a physician's assistant? Like, I don't know, can I see the billable rates on who's going to treat me right now? And it's, it would be nice if there was more upfront, choices with that. Do I need a specialist for this or for that? And a lot of times too, with the insurance, in order to get a specialist, you need to be. The whole thing just makes my head spin. I always say this is the point where I say, eat well, exercise, be healthy, stay away from hospitals if you can.
Right. A hospital's not a place to get better.
Right.
So, you're right. The best bet is to stay out of the hospital if at all possible. And unfortunately, people, don't have that choice. And when you go in, you don't have a choice and say, gee, I just want the physician's assistant because their billing is half as much and then I'll have a lot lower copay. No, you get what you get. And it's really a difficult situation. So those medical bills have pushed many of my clients into bankruptcy because they're already teetering. They're already living paycheck to paycheck. And then you add this to it, or the time off of work that they couldn't go in if they were in the hospital, or now if they're because of COVID, people are losing hours left and right as well. So this is a problem that's going to keep happening this year too.
It will. And so back to with hospital and medical bills, that could be astronomical. And then looking at Chapter 7 discharge, full discharge, or 13 reorganization, how much of that goes into, and at this point, can we talk a little bit about what it means to have to qualify for a 7 and or why not a 13 might be? But I always, from what I've known over the years of 13, like if I do a bankruptcy ever, I want to do a 13. It sounds great.
Well, actually, so first of all, medical bills are dischargeable, meaning they can be eliminated in either Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. Let me give you the difference between the two different types of bankruptcy. Chapter 7 is debt elimination. What debts does it eliminate? Chapter 7 would eliminate medical bills, credit cards, and other what's called unsecured debt, meaning you didn't buy something specifically with it where they owned the thing until you paid it off. But if, for example, you buy a car and you have a car note where you have to pay several $100s a month, they own the car. The company owns the car until you pay it off. Then you get the title. That is called a secured debt. Same thing with your house, and you have to pay a mortgage every month until it's paid in full, in which case you get the title to the house free and clear. But so those are the two different types of debt. So Chapter 7 would eliminate the unsecured debt. It does not eliminate student loans, and it does not eliminate income taxes that are under 3 years old. Over 3 years old, you have a chance of eliminating income taxes if you meet certain requirements. Chapter 13 is the reorganization, where you get to basically reorganize your debts into one and consolidate them into one payment. And you can reorganize them. It's pretty flexible, but it only goes 5 years. And you, in that plan, in the Chapter 13 plan, in the reorganization, you can catch up on your house payments, you can catch up on car payments, and really get things in order, and you pay your other debts, unsecured debts, either in a percentage or in full. What determines what type of bankruptcy you can file? Number one, do you have equity in your house? In Illinois, you can keep $15,000 per person worth of equity in a house. If it's much beyond that, then you may have to do Chapter 13 anyway. And you can keep other certain things. The other thing that determines what type of bankruptcy you can do is how much money you make. There's something called the means test. Generally, if families make over a certain amount of money, then they have to reorganize debt and pay back a certain percentage. The means test will tell the court and the court trustee how much they should pay back. So that's Chapter 13. That's a reorganization based on those two factors. And then if not, most people would choose Chapter 7. So Chapter 7 eliminates debt and is generally a 3 to 4 month process, and there's one court hearing about a month after you file. Chapter 13, on the other hand, is a 3 to 5 year repayment plan where you pay back your debts and reorganize them over up to 5 years.
Wonderful. And people are just, I think, shocked by that because they don't realize, because they think, I have the priceless work of art, or I have too many cars, or I don't want the boat to go away, or something else, whatever. And they think bankruptcy is not an option for me because they just don't know about Chapter 13. So how much do they pay back with a Chapter 13? Is it all of the debts, a portion of? I mean, how does that work?
Right. Depending on how the means test works out and what kind of assets they have, it's anywhere usually from 10% of their unsecured debt to 100%. And the factors are, like I talked about before, how much equity they have in their house and other things, and cars, and what the means test result is. The means test takes into account exactly how much this family made over the last 6 months. So, for example, if they make $100,000 average yearly salary, 6 months worth of that would be put into the test, and then it would determine, and then you're allowed certain expenses such as mortgage or rent, car payments, food, utilities, and things like that based on where you live, and then out pops a number. That number will determine how much has to be paid. So it may be 50% of the debt has to be paid back. So it's supposed to be an objective test. It was developed in 2005 to be an objective way to tell people if they, depending on how much they make, how much they should pay. And so that's my job, is to come up with the allowable expenses and deductions to get the best possible result in that test. So I would review it all with my clients and determine how much they would have to pay. So it can range the whole range.
Okay. Thank you for setting that straight, because it's just something people are not aware of if they haven't gone through it before. So going back to healthcare in the whole world of injury claims and damage awards, so someone hires the Favia law firm for a soft tissue injury, they're rear-ended, they've got a personal injury claim, they're about to get that check, but they're also about to lose the house in foreclosure, this, that, and everything else. What happens to that personal injury claim and damage award? Is that going to be gobbled up by the trustee? And what can we expect there with the exemptions, and what are those exemptions?
Right. So in a bankruptcy, if somebody has an injury claim, just as we talked about with medical malpractice, it's the same kind of thing. So if they had an injury and they have a claim, it doesn't have to be a lawsuit, but if they have a claim, when they file for bankruptcy protection, they're allowed to protect, again, $15,000 worth of those proceeds, and then anything beyond that would be taken by the bankruptcy trustee and used to pay whoever that person owes. That's $15,000 per person. So if two people have different accidents, it's $15,000 for one spouse and $15,000 for the other. But anyway, with one claim, it's $15,000. Anything beyond that is used to pay their bills. Now, here's a nifty thing where, say, for example, Mr. Favia obtains $500,000 for this person, but they just couldn't wait and they had to file for bankruptcy protection. And the person has $50,000 worth of bills that they couldn't pay. Well, so here's how it would work. The person, if the case is settled, the bankruptcy trustee would keep on Mr. Favia. Mr. Favia would get his fees. The client would first get their $15,000. The trustee would pay the $15,000 worth of bills and their statutory required legal fees. Then, beyond that, then the client would get the rest. So they might clear another $400,000 out of it, but that process has to be followed. So if there's an excess, the bankruptcy court doesn't take it, it goes back to the client.
Okay, that's how that works. All right, our last one for today is this is the really big showstopper a lot of people are waiting for, and it just blows their minds when they hear about it, but the automatic stay. The automatic stay is such a great thing. Why do people love it, and what other final additional issues and bankruptcy options you want to tell us about? But the automatic stay. People will like this.
Nick, thanks for giving some love to the bankruptcy automatic stay. I've never heard of people actually saying they love it, but it is an amazing thing. Number one, it stops. It stays. It stops any court action other than like child support and certain divorce actions. So it's magical because it's automatic. So what happens is if you file, it's a federal bankruptcy case, which means that law trumps anything that's happening in the state. So if you live in Texas or Illinois, if there's a court proceeding against you, it's automatically halted. And all I need to do, and I get a lot of joy in this, is just email the notice saying, this guy filed bankruptcy. You got to stop everything. And all the little guys, all the lawsuits in the state courts have to stop. and they may not like it. It's federal law, and it's beyond their powers. So they're like, oh, I have to stop. So wage garnishments stop, money from paychecks, that's money from paychecks stop, lawsuits stop, all sorts of nasty creditor calls stop, and that's why bankruptcy is so powerful. So I have the power of the federal government behind me, which enforces all this. So if somebody violates it, we can sue them for going after my guy, and it's against the law. So there are all sorts of powerful things you can do with the automatic stay, and that's what gives people the breathing room that bankruptcy does.
Yes, you can eat your dinner without the phone ringing 7,000 times. And they are bad. I know that my car payment is through Ally Bank, and if I am 30 seconds or a day late, the phone starts ringing, and it's computers, and the computers will call and call and call, and now they're sending text messages. You might be getting emails or contacted all sorts of different ways. It's almost like that credit card, the Capital One credit card ad they used to have on TV with all the people on the horses and everyone like running after you. It's they're vicious.
Right, 100%. It would stop all of those bothersome calls, and they don't only call you at dinner. They call you at breakfast, and they call you on your cell phone. And there's certain rules, but they used to call people on their jobs. I don't think they can do that anymore. There's certain rules against that. But now that they have your cell phone, it's calling right in your pocket. So,
right.
It really helps, and it really helps people breathe and figure out a way beyond their debt and a way to either reorganize it or get rid of certain debts. So it's very helpful, and it is the showstopper.
Well, it is, and the creditors are so awful because they will ask you, and they make you feel bad. They say, "Can you tell me why you cannot pay today, or why it is?" And it's just demoralizing. It's just awful. So anyhow, let's throw in one more question to you. So after the bankruptcy is all said and done, people are concerned with rebuilding credit, getting things back in shape. What are some general tips that you have for people, in deciding whether they're going to do bankruptcy, as to, when it's over, after the notice to the creditor meeting's done and after everyone's gotten what they need and the trustee is set? What do people expect afterwards? What's it like post-bankruptcy?
Right. So post-bankruptcy, what happens is your credit score takes a slight dip, and then magically your credit starts going up. So within 2 years, well, first of all, right after bankruptcy filing, right after the discharge, people can get car loans. People get mailed, and we talked about this a little bit, credit card offers in the mail for new credit. So they can start rebuilding their credit right away and have a small credit limit and start paying things on time and rebuilding right away. And then 2 years after bankruptcy filing, people can qualify for home loans with the FHA and other places, and it really opens up opportunity. I mean, I've had people, call me back later and say, this is great. My credit is back, and I'm able to live life like normal. And it really doesn't hinder you as much as it helps you move forward. So it's really, and then when I do a credit report for people, it shows the estimated 12-month post-bankruptcy score, and it starts going up. And really, the sooner you do it, the better, because if your score goes down a lot, then it'll take a lot longer to go up. So the sooner you can take care of it, the less negative marks you'll have on your credit, and the more your credit will go up. So really, it's beneficial to just about everybody. And believe it or not, with people, I've had people where they're on time with every payment, and they come in, and they're just way overextended. It can still help, even if you're on time with all your payments and you're just struggling, with every paycheck, every dime is going to pay all these bills, because the credit is just very crippling. So it can help you, not only rebound your credit, but rebound your life.
Well, in learning how to live within your means afterward, and some people, after the credit cards are gone, they can get used to doing without credit cards for a while or do the secured card for a while and then get that credit back and realize that without the huge balance and when you pay that credit card bill down, only charge what you can afford monthly. Pay that thing down to 7% debt to whatever's owed. See that? There's all sorts of little tips and tricks to boosting the credit score. And you got to know the right people to tell you that, and all the debt solution companies are not there to tell you that, but people like you, Dan, are there to help tell them that and help them with that. And they're going to say, I didn't know that this was such a good deal and so easy and so helpful, because there's a lot of people who don't want you to take advantage of those laws that are there to help us as consumers. And after it's done, I don't know anyone. I don't think I've ever heard of someone say, "Oh wow, I did a bankruptcy and wow, I really regret it."
Right.
Never heard that.
Not only that, the bankruptcy process really gives people they have to do 2 financial education courses. The first one is basically on bankruptcy alternatives, which I think is kind of useless because by the time they consult a bankruptcy attorney, they're at the end of their rope and have tried everything. But the second course is on money management for the future. And it can never hurt to get the financial education. A lot of people just missed out on that. There really isn't a lot in high school. And I've gone into high schools and taught classes and been guest speakers in different consumer classes to explain what credit card actually is. People don't know that. So they get a second shot at how to use it properly. And people can learn to live and pay off their credit card balance each month and get their rewards. They can get points. They can get airfare. But it certainly doesn't help you if you have a running balance, because then you're paying a lot more for those things that you bought. And I don't think people really realize that. After bankruptcy, it makes them realize that they don't need to run into the red on their credit cards, and it's really not to their benefit to just pay the minimum payments, that they need to have a plan to pay it off in a hurry to pay a lot less interest. So all of those things, it becomes a second chance at how to manage your finances a lot better.
Right. And as more people, I think that technology and doing programs like this and marketing for bankruptcy issues and attorneys has opened the door to people to get the information so that more people can file. And when more people do file for bankruptcy, more of the credit companies and their boardrooms, they have to sit there and figure out, now what are we going to do with these people? Are we going to extend them credit, this and that? And there's always new. So if you had a bankruptcy even 10 years ago, how things happened before, during, and after may be different now than they were then. Asking someone who you knew went through a bankruptcy before doesn't really necessarily mean you're getting the right answer. You need to ask someone who does this every day. And as the questions come up, you'll get questions like, I want to file for bankruptcy and I've got this, and I have a bunch of Bitcoin or Dogecoin and value that. Now, cryptocurrency, how does that figure in? I didn't even think about that until just now. You're talking about the youngins in high school, what they're learning, and they're all just going to get money and be on TikTok videos with their new Bugatti they bought with Bitcoin. And it's like, I'm 46 and I'm scratching my head going, I don't know what they're talking about, but is that working?
Well, actually, it's funny you should mention that, because I had a client come in recently who thought she was buying Bitcoin and all this cryptocurrency. It turned out it was a ripoff. They systematically took her money. It looked like a legitimate site. She could go onto an app and it would show her money. And every time she tried to withdraw it, they said, "Oh, we need more money." And so it turned out it was a scam, and she called the FBI, and there's not much they can do because these people work offshore. They work in Russia or China or wherever. And so people have to be really careful with these new investment tools, because they aren't regulated as much. And really, it's the Wild West. So you have to be really careful. If you do have legitimate Bitcoin or any kind of crypto investments like that, that too is just like a bank account or just like a stock account, that whatever that value is, you're only allowed to protect in Illinois. It would fall under what's called the wild card, $4,000. That's it. So, but these things go up and down so much in value that you should really talk to somebody who knows what they're doing with this, that's legit, that you see in person. Because if you try to invest online with Bitcoin, you can get really, really fooled. So, that's my words of wisdom. And of course, you and I are middle-aged guys who aren't necessarily up on all these trends, but sometimes it's a very tricky thing. So you got to make sure you don't fall into a trap with those.
Well, I like I'll tell you what I know from being a Gen X is good old-fashioned hard work. And what's easy to do is work hard when you have less stress and less things hanging over your head, and getting rid of some of the financial stress of things just can weigh on people, and you don't realize how much it weighs on you until you get rid of it and move forward and start getting those credit card apps in the mail and find out that first time you can go, you might need to pay a little bit more money down on a car. You might need to pay, a little bit more money security deposit, but you realize how many people have taken advantage. These laws are there for us, and they're there to help us.
Right.
And it's actually biblical. It goes back to the Old Testament. So there's a lot of stuff there to unpack and learn, and I just hope people who are looking at the financial ruin that a lot of things, especially with COVID, a lot of people have been hurt badly, and they are now at the point where they're trying to build again and dig out and go forward, and it's just a lot easier to do it without dragging all that weight from that bad debt around you. So I hope that they call you and get more information. What are best ways for people to get in touch with you?
Right. My website is bankruptcylawchicago.com, and my phone number is 312-789-9999. That's 312-789-9999, bankruptcylawchicago.com. I'm happy to take any questions, no matter how small, and happy to answer people's questions and help people and business owners navigate their way through this tough time and figure out a way to go forward. I think it can definitely help them.
All right. Well, Mr. Dan Winter, thank you so much for your time, and thank you also to the people who listen to this program. And when you find it on your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you may find it, hit that like button, hit the share button, because you just never know who out there is looking for this exact type of information. And people don't advertise their financial troubles. So the person who they might not like or share it, but they're going to see it. And when they see it and listen to a podcast like this, they're going to say, that automatic stay that Mr. Winter talked about sounds really good right now. Let me get some more information and see if this is something that fits with my life and my plan. And again, it's like the Band-Aid. Once you rip it off, it doesn't hurt that bad. It's all that anticipation that just keeps people stuck shaking in the corner when they could be out there enjoying their life and moving forward, because life is for the living and we got to live.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for having me, and thanks to Mr. Favia for having this podcast.
Always. And again, for anyone in the medical industry, for individuals and organizations with personal injury claims, or if you are a licensed medical professional with regulatory issues, or any of the other things in the health-related sphere and world, that is all the world of Michael V. Favia and Associates and the Favia Law Firm, FaviaLawFirm.com for all of that. And for all the other programs that we do here on the Healthcare Consultants Podcast, Favia knows, the man is out there networking in all sorts of arenas, and, whether it's someone who needs a personal injury attorney or someone needs the specific architect to design a new dental practice, all of these people are people that Mike Favia knows. He's a good guy to know. He knows people like Dan Winter, and I like Dan Winter. So, Dan, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye now.